Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's another great night here in Ohio. There is a lot of fireworks being shown off outside. Um, I don't know if you'll be able to hear them over the microphone here. Hopefully not, because people start celebrating here for Fourth of July like a week ahead of time. You know, but whichever. Welcome. This is the Saturday Spiritualist. Of course, we go over different spiritualities and different tips and tricks and advice for becoming a more spiritual person. And yeah, today I'm going to cover something because this has happened to me before, and I'm sure it's happened to other people. We're going to cover what I like to call spiritual burnout, where you get to a point where you're just, oh, I've tried all these different things. I've tried this, I've tried that, and it was going good for a while, but now I'm worn down. I'm not feeling it, and I don't know what's wrong, and I'm backsliding. And that's a natural thing. That's the thing that happens. Things aren't always going to be good or perfect, or things aren't always going to go well all of the time. And so, what do you do when these kinds of things happen? We're going to talk about it. So it could be after a week, after a few weeks, after a month, few months, few years, even. You've either chosen a spirituality that fits with you and you've been feeling fulfilled and you've been feeling fired up and you've been feeling great and everything's great. And then all of a sudden you have just an increasing series of just bad times, bad days, bad experiences, just a bunch of stuff. And no matter how much you try to ritualize things, no matter how much um, you try to do prayer, meditation, whatever, no matter how much of your daily things that your mantras and your affirmations and all that, no matter how much that you feel like something's wrong. How's it going, James? Welcome. Um, and you're stressed out and you're bothered and you're upset and you're wondering, well, I thought I was making progress on this spiritual thing. So why do I feel so down? Why do I feel like everything's falling apart? There's ways to deal with that because we all get to that point. A lot of times life just intrudes and it breaks through our shell that we try to make our little spiritual sanctuary and things of that nature. And it's especially hectic when there's things like, of course, with Fourth of July coming up here in the United States, you've got all kinds of distractions. You've got all kinds of things going on outside. You've got people celebrating. You got all kinds of social stuff just happening all over the place, and it can be overwhelming. And and sometimes that overwhelms your carefully constructed spiritual defenses. Okay. So the first thing to do is to take a break. Sounds easy enough. First thing to do is just whatever part of your spiritual construct that you're using to center yourself, whether you meditate, as we talked about last week, or whether you pray, or whether you just go to a quiet place and just take in nature or whatnot, do that first. Always do the most obvious thing first, turn it off, and then turn it back on again. Always do, the most calming thing first. If that helps you feel a little bit better, take a look at what you've been doing. Take a look at the various repetitive things that you've been doing, um, at the ritual actions and things, the mantras and whatever, and ask yourself, how is this making me feel? Is it still making me feel empowered? Is it still making me feel calm and spiritually fulfilled? Or is it just feeling like something that I do every day? Is it feeling like something that I have to do every day? Is it feeling like if I don't do it, then I'm going to have a bad day? If it's starting to sound like that, like if it starts to sound more like work than something that's fulfilling, then you need to re-examine that a little bit. You need to go pick the thing that feels like the most, whether like maybe you have a mantra that you say every day. You say something like a particular phrase, and maybe lately you've been waking up and you've just been saying it with no real oomph behind it, and maybe you're just not feeling it anymore. So think back to why you picked that. Think back to why you chose that as something to help you towards spiritual fulfillment. Examine your reasoning, and see if you can get excited about it. See if you can still, if it still seems like something that gets the blood moving, something that makes you feel, I guess, joyful and things of that nature. And try that for each part of your spirituality. Take every little piece, examine it, and say, okay, well, this is working. This is fine. I feel good about this. This I don't really feel too good about. It's not really working. And there's a few ways you can deal with that. You can modify the parts that aren't quite working anymore. Maybe change the phrase a little bit. Maybe change the position that your body is in while you're meditating. Maybe change part of the diet. Maybe change a little part of it and see if that helps. Because maybe it just needs a little bit of spice. Maybe it just needs something to make it feel fresh again. If that doesn't help, then take that part, chuck it out, get rid of it, replace it with something else that does feel good, that does feel fulfilling, or leave it out completely, because maybe nothing will be able to replace that. Maybe it's just something that's never going to quite work out again. Take it, chuck it out. If it's not serving to fulfill your spiritual well-being, then get rid of it. If all of these things are fine, if you've examined all the different parts of all your personal stuff and they all seem fine, then look at external things. Look at things that maybe are intruding too much. Look at your relationships. Look at your job. Look at all the various other responsibilities you have, and examine where things may be trying to drag you down a little bit. Now, this is a tricky area because some of this isn't as simple as, oh, I was in this bad relationship and I've been meaning to break out of it for a while, so the obvious thing is to just break out, right? Sometimes it's people that you do really care about. Sometimes it's people that you have no intention of separating from. Sometimes it's a job that you really like, and it's like, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel great about it, but for some reason for some reason something about it now is causing negativity in me. Look at the reasoning why. Is it, if it's a person, maybe have a talk. Maybe be like, hey, you know what? I feel like maybe we're having some difficulties or something. Let's talk. Let's see if we can figure something out. I'm feeling kind of poorly about my mental state. Can we discuss that? If it's something like that that can be fixed, great. Do that. Always try to preserve those special relationships in your life. You don't really need to start cutting people off left or right just because maybe somebody upset you or something like that. If somebody didn't just walk up and like is constantly abusive, then there's no reason to just chuck them out the window. And don't literally chuck people out windows. Disclaimer. But sometimes some of that stuff is a little bit of tough love. Sometimes you're stuck in an area because of convenience, or because you thought, well, this makes me feel good right now, but you had no thought about how the future is going to treat you. And maybe you need an honest look at it and say, you know what, this is really damaging to my spiritual health and my mental health, and I have to do something. And sometimes you just have to let things go. You have to let people go. You have to let jobs go to move on to something else. Or just spend some time by yourself. I mean, jobs are kind of tricky because you still need to, you still need income to survive and things like that. So unless you're 100% self-sufficient and you live off in the wilderness, off the grid, and you can grow your own stuff without having to purchase anything, but which is, if you can do that, great, fantastic. Not very many people can. But for the rest of us, it's not particularly feasible. So you can't just up and quit a job with nothing in mind. But But there's things you can do externally to help repair the internal. There's something things you can do to reset the balance, and they don't have to be super drastic. They could be, I'd rather work a different position at my job, or I'd rather, you know, the people in my life, maybe where we're hanging out on the weekend is a bad place for me, or maybe what we're doing on the weekend or during the week is something bad. Maybe we can do something different. Maybe we can change things up and try something that's you know something else that's more fulfilling. You know, it's tempting to make it a kind of a selfish thing, a thing about, oh well, it's about me, it's about my spirituality. But you also have to consider the other people and the other situations involved. If you're in very close relationships, you have to consider how a change might affect another person and be considerate of that. I'm not saying to always put them, I'm not saying to always put someone else above yourself and never ever take time for you, because you do have to balance that a little bit. It's not selfish to be like, hey, you know what? This is me time. I got to take this. It's me time. You know, but it is selfish sometimes to work on yourself to the exclusion of anyone else who may have invested in you, who maybe have put aside things in their life that they could have instead been doing and have instead chosen to be with you or around you or whatever. And that is their choice, just like you make your own choices, but at the same time, be considerate of it. I'm not telling you just to, again, put their feelings as paramount above your own, but don't put your feelings as paramount above their own. It has to be a little bit balanced, a little bit of give and take in everything. And this is going to be a short one because it's mostly just that. It's just, if you feel worn down, if you feel like what you're doing isn't working out for you, then take some close looks at it and change what needs to be changed. Adaptability is super important. It is very important to be adaptable, to be fluid, to change things that need to be changed. It's tempting just to sit on our butts and sorry, the dog is over there not wanting to sit on her butt. Um, it's tempting to just sit around and just hope things get better. It's also tempting to just be like, oh well, I'll just pray about it and then it won't be my problem, or I'll just meditate about it and it won't be my problem. That's not what prayer and meditation should be for. They shouldn't be for pushing your problems off on your deity or on the universe or whatever. They should be for you to help reconcile your place with everything and to help the flow of energy and things and to make things a little bit more positive. It's not so that you can just throw stuff off. You can use them as a confessional, and that's fine too, because sometimes, sometimes you just need to get something off your chest. And if that's all it does, then great. But if it's a bunch of serious problems that are more than just, hey, I just need to vent, if it's more than that, if it's like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore, so I'm just going to pray it away. I'm going to meditate it away. I'm going to whatever. That's not helping. That's not going to make anything go away. You're just going to feel worse. Okay? And it's not healthy. Also, if you notice that you're falling back on this kind of thing more to deal with the lessening of spirituality in your life, recognize whether you have a substance problem occurring or not. You don't want to take it's like my episode on substances a few weeks back. You don't want to rely on mind-altering things to the exclusion of your own personal thoughts and feelings. You don't want to just be like, you know what, I had a crappy day, so I'm just going to take some mushrooms and I'm just going to drift off and that'll be great. I'm just going to get super high and just forget about it. I'm just going to get drunk and not worry about it. That's not spiritual. Using these things in a certain way can be spiritual, but not that way. You don't want to develop a problem. And if you feel like you're drifting in that direction, try to recognize it as soon as you can. And if you need help, ask for help. It's a difficult thing to get into this kind of stuff and then Recognize first if you have a problem, and then try to kick it if it definitely is a serious problem. You know, and that applies to all kinds of other things, like spending too much or eating too much, or and I don't mean eating too much like, oh, I'm just really hungry, I want to eat, I'm just a big person. I'm not talking about your weight or anything like that. I'm talking about if you're just binging, if you're just like, oh, I get stressed out, so I'm just going to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. Because even if you work that off, it's still not healthy for you. The mindset is not healthy for you. Even if you're still able to go to the gym or do whatever for the next whatever time, it's not healthy to just do that kind of stuff, regardless, because it's the mindset. Same thing with work. You can't just, as Deadpool says in the chat room, you can't just be like, oh, you know what? Maybe if I just take up all my time with extra hours, I'm just going to tell them to give me all the hours at work, all the overtime and everything. I'm just going to, or if you're doing stuff at home, just be like, I'm just going to work in my garage and just not pay attention to anything else. And eventually I'll feel better. You'll just exhaust yourself. You'll wear yourself out. And then not only are you mentally and spiritually drained, you're physically drained. And then you get unhealthy. It's unhealthy. And we do that. We all do that. I mean, I get into stuff where I'm like, I don't want to worry about this thing, so I'm going to do this instead. I don't want to. I got stuff I'm working on, so I get into modes and things like that. So I have to balance it myself. As you guys know, just because I have this show and I provide this advice and this subtle direction and things like that, it doesn't mean that I'm in the know and that I know exactly what's going on. And I'm not a perfect person either. Nobody is. Nobody's going to be a perfect person. Perfection is impossible. There is no such thing as real perfection, honestly. So, this is just my thoughts. And I'm flawed just as much as everybody else. I went through something very recently that I had to have a serious talk with my family about something that was really a problem that I was causing for my family. I'm not going to get into it too much because it's private personal stuff, but it was definitely a thing that I was doing that was causing us hardship, and I had not admitted to anybody yet. I hadn't been like, what, this is why we're in this situation. It's me, it's this and this. And I had to just be like, what? I gotta tell you, and I'm trying to fix it. Sorry, the dog over there with the wildfire smoke and everything. The dog has an issue where she's kind of crazy and she wants to go out of the house to go to the bathroom multiple times a day, but not actually go to the bathroom. She just wants to go out, spin around, and then forget why she's out there and come in. So with the wildfire smoke, it has affected her breathing a little bit because she's been out in it too much. So now she has a cough and she doesn't want to sit still with it. She wants to get up and move around and aggravate it. So anyway, stresses and things. But that's basically the advice that I'm going to give you guys. If you feel like your spiritual journey is just, you got to a good point and then everything's suddenly falling apart and it's collapsing, then take a moment, get centered, look at it objectively, take a deep breath, and just be like, okay, what can I change? What can I change that is changeable? And what will get me back on the right track? And sometimes you have to tear down the whole thing and start over from scratch. And that's a spiritual reckoning that's kind of difficult and kind of unsavory, but sometimes you have to do that. But most of the time you don't. Most of the time you can just take a look at a couple things that are not really working and just tweak them a little bit, or just switch them out, or just be like, what, this isn't, this breathing exercise was helping me at first, but now it just feels like something that I just have to do. And it's not working for me anymore. And when I used to go to when I used to go to church as a kid, there'd be things that you would do every single Sunday at church. There'd be certain prayers every Sunday said the exact same way, with no deviation. There'd be certain songs that you would sing in the same exact way every Sunday. And I didn't feel connected to them. I couldn't. Like, it just seemed like, oh, we do this every single week. It's just repetition. And if you're working on your own personal spirituality, you don't ever want that to happen. And if things start to feel that way, change them. Change them. Change them to something that'll make you feel better. So, like I said, this was going to be a short one. Not only it's just me giving you some little advice about it, but also because I got to pay attention to the animals here and things like that. But yeah, if you have any advice that you would like to give others for their spiritual journey, by all means, comment on this video. You can still put comments on it even when the video is not live. So if you're in the chat room now, if you're on YouTube, like James and Deadpool, or if you're on Facebook or wherever, you can comment and it'll be preserved for the future, I hope. But that's all I've got for you tonight. Like I said, short one. And I will see you folks next week. And until then, be well.